that there have been infringements on free speech that actually affect not just the British, of course, what the British do in their own country is up to them, but also affect American technology companies and by extension American citizens. So that is something that we'll talk about today at lunch.
We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time. Well, no, I mean, certainly we wouldn't want to reach across US citizens, and we don't, and that's absolutely right. But in relation to free speech in the UK, I'm very proud of our history there.
Today, London, usually engulfed by the noise of the city and the daily hustle and bustle, was filled with something completely different. The capital of Great Britain was enveloped in a strange atmosphere that pervaded even the busiest streets. This is not just an ordinary day. This is a day when thousands of people gathered in Downing Street, one of the country's most emblematic streets. Where the British flag traditionally flies proudly, other slogans now resounded. Why did we not expect a real political storm to start right here, under the Prime Minister's windows? Times of change do not always come at lightning speed, but what we are witnessing now is surely a signal that people's patience has come to an end. It has been many years since Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, walked into his Downing Street office with promises of change. When he spoke in public, his words sounded resolute, his gaze full of confidence. It seemed that this man would bring real renewal and restore confidence in a political system that many perceived as rotten, sometimes disconnected from real life. But what we see today is instead a sense of fatigue, confusion, and most importantly, disillusionment hanging over the atmosphere in London. The thousands of people who have gathered in the square are not just protesting. They are a voice saying enough is enough, not just about specific decisions, but about the very shape of a political leadership that has become so alienated that it is hard to take seriously. The flag that usually symbolizes the unity and pride of a nation was now raised in dissent. People did not stand in silence, but loudly demanded one thing: the resignation of Keir Starmer. This demand, which might have once seemed fantastic, was now a reality. A man who not long ago was seen as a pillar for the future is now being labeled as powerless and a disappointment. Why has this happened? Why did a seemingly mature political figure find himself at the center of such a violent protest wave? To understand this, we need to look at his career and the promises he once made. When Starmer first began his journey into politics, many saw him as someone with a bright and honest outlook on the future. He epitomized the new wave. He was someone who could bring order to British politics, offer answers to questions that seemed relevant to the whole of society. He spoke of honesty, transparency, and the importance of returning to the Labour Party's original values. But once he gained control, it became apparent that his promises remained empty words. His actions did not match the words that once so inspired people. Instead of showing resolve in the face of growing political instability, he chose the safer path. Starmer, as many have pointed out, has become like a man in a suit sitting in an office, seemingly disconnected from the real problems facing the country. His policies, instead of inspiring and uplifting the nation, have become like a sterile document ready to be signed. A complete lack of emotion, real ideas, and bright solutions. Like a PowerPoint presentation, the appearance is important, but the inside is empty. As time went on, many people began to notice this gap between what was promised and what was real. When the country needed to address issues that deal with real life, healthcare, unemployment, poverty, Starmer failed time and time again to provide a clear answer. Instead of offering a real alternative to government, he kept retreating into bureaucracy. His leadership style resembled the work of a seasoned bureaucrat, but not a passionate politician willing to fight for the people. At moments when choices and masculine determination were required, he showed only aloofness and lack of a clear position. The country was not inspired by a politics based on empty promises, and the belief that the solution to any issue is simply a matter of a well-written document. And so, after some time, protests are beginning to be heard on the streets of London, which are not silent. The people who stood outside Downing Street were not just random passers-by. They were healthcare workers, veterans, students, and small businesses, ordinary people who looked at Starmer and saw him as not the leader they expected. Expected hope and got empty words. Expected action, and instead were met with overcautiousness and uncertainty in every step. And this was perhaps the moment when the people began to act. They no longer wanted to be mere passive spectators in a political game, played by the people to whom they had entrusted their destinies. The people did not wait, but stood up to defend their rights and demands. When behind the walls of government buildings, politicians speak the language of statistics and verbal manipulation, on the streets of London there are real demands. This is not just a call for resignation. It is a demand for politics to regain its human face, a demand to be heard. Starmer may still not realize it, but the people have begun to act. And now they are not waiting for empty words. but for real change. Amidst the vibrant waves of protest that have swept the streets of London, there are voices of people who have ceased to be mere observers of the political arena, but have become active participants in it. These people are not just those who, for whatever reason, disagree with the government's political line. They are those who see what is happening as a real threat to their future. They might not have gone to rallies or joined protest movements before, but today their patience is wearing thin. People are demanding change. They are demanding not just a change in policy, but a change in the very nature of the leadership that they feel is not meeting the needs of society. These protesters are not radicals or anti-globalization. They are not regime overthrowers. They are ordinary people, doctors, teachers, small business owners, students. People who were once attracted to the idea of the Labour Party, but now see only disappointment in its leadership. What is it about Keir Starmer's leadership that displeases them? It's not just his political views. It's not just a mismatch between what he has promised and what he has done. It's much deeper than that. Starmer came into politics with promises to put ordinary people back in power. He was the man who was supposed to be the voice of the people, the man who would lead the country through difficult times by restoring confidence in the political system. However, as soon as he took the chair, his promises lost their power. Strangely, with every step he took, he became more and more aloof, and his policies became more and more bureaucratic and cold. People who had hoped for some real change began to notice that change never came. That instead of decisive steps, all they see is a bureaucratic routine that harbors real problems rather than solving them. Instead of offering answers to the issues of concern, Starmer offered only process, long reports, well-intentioned words, but no concrete steps. He has become the man in the austere suit, with papers and reports that he struggles to hold in his hands, but which cannot solve a real-world problem. This is where the disconnect that is increasingly clear in the air begins. Starmer seemed to know that his party and his leadership required not just new ideas, but real inspiration. So what did he do? He replaced passion and the will to change with dry practicality, an approach that may satisfy bureaucrats but fails to inspire the nation. The Labour Party, which once fought for the rights of ordinary people, now looks like a team of bureaucrats concerned solely with domestic issues. Somewhere along the way the party lost its spirit. And so now, as people stand on the streets of London protesting, not for empty slogans but for real change, they declare, "We are tired of this." This is not just a reaction to Starmer's policies, it is the result of his failure to see how painfully his policies have been received. He failed to realize what it takes to get people to believe in his leadership. Instead, his actions have left the country at a crossroads, and he himself has proven to be a man who cannot lead the nation to real solutions. But the biggest problem is that Starmer doesn't seem to understand the difference between politics and PR. It's not just rhetoric, it's not just being able to talk pretty. Politics requires courage, decisions, the ability to make tough choices, even if they are unpopular. Starmer, on the other hand, has turned out to be the kind of person who every day looks more and more like the same bureaucrat, who epitomizes the bureaucracy that can't get out of the office and see the real world. The policies he pursues have no character, they have no core. He changes his position often, trying to please everyone. First he's in favor of hard borders, then he's a friend of big business, and then he becomes an advocate of social justice. This is not just political flexibility, it is political cowardice, an inability to take responsibility for his views and actions. The party that was once supposed to be a symbol of hope is now a party organization that, without a clear line or ideology, tries to please everyone. But someone still has to set the tone, and it will not be done with constant wavering and tossing left and right. The people standing outside Downing Street are not demanding Starmer's resignation for the sake of someone else taking his place. They are demanding change. They are demanding a strong and decisive leader who will not be afraid to be honest, who will be willing to lead the country into the future. But instead all they see is an old politician who never got over his fears and doubts. In response to this, they have taken the floor themselves. With every rally, with every protest on the streets of London, that voice grows louder. But it's not just a loud cry from people disillusioned with the political course. It is a warning to everyone, to Starmer, to the Labour Party, to all those who have forgotten that politics should not just be a set of empty words and promises, but real actions. Real actions that speak for themselves. And while Starmer remains in his ivory tower, the public is finding other ways to be heard. This moment may be a pivotal moment, not only for his political career, but for the future of the party. After all, it is moments like this that decide whether the party will side with the people or remain behind the doors of offices, where its decisions don't touch real people. Starmer may not realize it yet, but every now and then, even the most confident leader has to realize that the people are not just masses to be ignored. They are a force that demands respect. With each passing day, the discontent that is maturing in society is becoming more evident. The protests that began with small protests have now taken on a much more serious character. The people standing outside Downing Street are not just expressing their discontent. They are demanding change. They are demanding that the authorities recognize that the current political line being drawn by Keir Starmer is no longer responsive to the issues that concern the country. This is a protest not just against one man, but against an entire system that has become disconnected from the real needs of the people. Starmer may still be trying to maintain his image as a leader, but more and more people are beginning to see him as nothing more than a political manipulator trying to please everyone and pleasing no one. The protesters gathered in front of the walls of Downing Street clearly feel that their demands carry weight. These people are neither marginalized nor supporters of any radical ideas. They are those who saw in the Labour Party and in Starmer the hope for change. They hoped that at last a leader would emerge who would not be afraid to make himself known, who could lead the country out of the political deadlock. The reality, however, turned out to be quite different. A party that once prided itself on its fight for workers' rights has been consumed by processes that can hardly be described as moving forward. The Labour Party under Starmer's leadership has become the centre of a bureaucratic machine that loses all connection with the real problems of the people. Starmer has never been able to offer the public a clear and precise programme of action. Instead, he continues to rely on empty promises and predictable political games that, despite all their good intentions, fail to inspire the nation. Against this backdrop, discontent is growing. Each new day brings new voices ready to say enough is enough. People who were silent before are suddenly beginning to speak out. The protesters who came to the rally outside Downing Street are not standing in silence. They are loudly declaring that the country cannot move forward if its political leadership continues to drift. They are demanding that Starmer finally accept responsibility for his actions and decisions. But he never seems to have realized that it's time to act. Instead of offering a real vision for the future, he is mired in compromise, acquiescence for the sake of it. A country waiting for a real leader is tired of endless excuses and obsequious statements. Starmer never offered anything inspiring. The time for flashy solutions is long gone. People want to see action, not just words. But it doesn't end there. Beneath this layer of frustration and fatigue lies another, perhaps more significant reason for what's happening. It's not just politics, it's a crisis of confidence, a crisis that encompasses the entire system. All those slogans about fighting for justice, about returning the country to real values, sound increasingly hollow when they are not backed by action. Starmer never seems to have realized that his leadership is meaningless without real steps. He continues to convince everyone that following a political course is enough, even if that course does not produce results. His proposals look more and more like old policies that are incapable of meeting the challenges of new times. Against this backdrop, people who genuinely believed in change are building up anger and frustration. They are no longer willing to wait for Starmer himself to find the right solution. They want change here and now. All these protests are not just a coincidence. They are the result of deep political and social isolation. The people standing in front of Downing Street are not just demanding Starmer's resignation. They are demanding political honesty, openness and real action. This is their way of saying they are tired of being the silent majority. They want to be heard. They want politicians to finally recognize that their actions and decisions directly affect the lives of all of us. And this is more than just a protest against one politician. It's a protest against a system that people have long felt is incapable of dealing effectively with the challenges of today. In response, Starmer's behavior is becoming more and more apparent. He continues to close himself off from public opinion, avoiding open debate and honest conversations. He seems more concerned with his image and ratings than with the real issues that people care about. It's an isolation that destroys trust and alienates him from those who once supported him. And in this context, the protests, growing more massive by the day, only reinforce the sense that the country is on the cusp of change. Keir Starmer risks being left behind as he watches the public demand real action rather than empty words. He may not realize it yet, but it's time for him to take responsibility for his mistakes and decisions. And if he doesn't, if he continues to avoid talking openly to the people, the protests will only continue to gain momentum. That said, change is impossible without decisive steps. This moment, as the streets of London fill with the voices of the disaffected, is more than just a signal. It is a sign that the country is ready to act. People don't want to just listen to promises, they want to see results. If Starmer isn't prepared to offer a real solution, he may be beyond this fight. With each passing day, the protesters are becoming more certain that they are not just expressing their feelings, they are demanding change. And this is not just a political struggle, it is a battle for the future of the country, for a return of faith in a political system that should serve the people and not isolated interests. The process has already begun, and it will not stop. Starmer, if he has not already realized it, will face the fact that the public will no longer tolerate further compromises and deviations from realpolitik. The protesters are demanding real action, real change. And if Starmer is not ready to hear that message, he can stand by and watch his political legacy fade into discontent and alienation.